And I've had lots of coaches, and I won't name the companies and what have you, but I've learned something from every single one of them, and I'm glad I went through it. And I know you didn't know I was going to say this, but meeting you has been the best. I mean, you think, okay, I met Pete Dawson, I met Larry Rosenthal, I met a couple other people along the way, and then I met Mike. It's changed. I was like, oh, I don't want to know the numbers. I don't need to know this. And he's like, oh no, you do need to know. He says, and then he shows you the numbers, and you're like, oh. And I go, I need to fix that. He said, yeah, you didn't even know you need to fix it. You didn't know what you didn't know. And you didn't even know you didn't know it. And I'm like, where'd you hear that from? So being with you and learning some of those kinds of things, I'm excited about being a CEO and still being a mentor and a teacher, so to speak, and bringing people along. I love the way you bring us along, and you've now my team has now fallen in love with you. And so they're like, wow, he's the best thing that's ever happened to us. Because somebody comes in, usually they're like, oh, we're not sure if we like this guy person. They're trying to get us to do these things. And that has been the biggest blessing. And you work harder than anybody else I know at that role. I mean, like you said, we've only been together, what, 6 months? And I said, but you've spent enough time with me to where it could have been 3 to 5 years with anybody else. And that still would have been a lot of time spent. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate what you bring to the game. You're making me better. I'm more excited about where I'm headed in dentistry, and I am not ready to retire anytime soon.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Champion Dentist. I'm Mike Kulwiec, and with me today is a true champion in dentistry, Dr. Randy Johnson of Vacaville, California. He's the founder of the Center for Contemporary Dentistry. And Randy, it is a privilege and an honor to have you with us today. You've got experience in dentistry that is coming up in terms of having your own practice on 40 years. You're one of these guys that I consider to be NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL championship caliber. And I'm saying that just not for your ego, but as you know, I've been around dentistry myself for many decades. And I have had the privilege and honor of knowing a lot of dentists, but not everybody gets to play in the major leagues. And you're a guy that has been playing in the major leagues for a good number of years. So welcome. I'm glad you're with us today.
Thank you, Mike. And I consider it an honor and a privilege myself. I respect you greatly. I've gotten to know you, and in getting to know you, the more I know you, the more impressed I am.
Well, thank you. Likewise. And for guys and gals, uh, Dr. Randy, he is a client of my firm, TriVantage. And TriVantage, we have three divisions, practice coaching, and we also have a division for marketing called Gold Medal, and it's an ecosystem. They talk to each other. There's not this separate silo thing. And then we actually have a third division that's life coaching, which is something that we have certified coaches do as well. So it's the only ecosystem that I know of that's put it all under one roof. And I know, Randy, you're going to have a chance to comment on that and how that's different from what you've experienced in the past. But let's go way back, not to the maternity ward. Okay,
Not the 1800s. Okay.
I know you grew up in Vacaville,
Yeah.
and which is guys, San Francisco Bay Area, but you went to dental school in Oklahoma at Oral Roberts. What a great name for a dental school, Oral Roberts. And tell us first of all, tell us about that experience and how did that set the stage for your career in dentistry 40 years as of next year?
Um, well, first of all, the school was a smaller school, and a lot more intimate. So I literally had a meal with every single faculty member at some point in time during my stay there. There were 30 people in our class. We got great mentorship. Um, we didn't realize what an education we were getting. We knew that some of the professors, we were having to use their textbooks, and we come to find out that those are the same textbooks that are being used in many of the other dental schools across the country. We just happen to have the author as our teacher. So we didn't realize how blessed we were sometimes until a little later. And once we got out, people would say, oh my gosh, you learned that in dental school? And my classmates would all echo that. They're like, wow, we must have learned more than the average bear. We had an idea because our school scored second highest in the nation in the national boards. Harvard beat us, but they take it after 3 years. We took it after two. So we feel like of the regular 4 year schools, we were the top of the heap. But and it really had nothing to do with us. It's something to do with the way we were kind of pushed and pulled at the same time. And that pulling was mentoring. They were mentoring us along, and they were pushing us from behind too, letting us know that, hey, it's that old adage: if you're a professor, publish or perish. You've got to learn, or you're not going to be here. At the same time, we want you here, and we don't want to lose a single one of you. It was a great experience.
So you and I, we've been working together for about a half a year now, and we've
Is
had a
that
lot of
all?
we've had a lot of conversations, and that's one of the things that I like about how we coach, how we consult is we spend a serious amount of time with our clients, and it's probably more than you ever experienced with anybody else in the past, and I'm proud of that. But there's something I have picked up from you. I've picked up a lot about you, but I'm going to use the word, I think you were a precocious student. I think you were the kind of guy that really dove into the deep end of the pool. You've told me some stories, and I want you to talk about that because I think that mindset actually has been a mindset that you've carried on with you after dental school. Can you give us your thoughts about what made you different as a dental student?
It's kind of funny. I think I didn't know enough to be, worried about staying in line. I would go up to they had a at the clinic, they had a second floor, and there was a room in the back, and the head of the fixed and pros departments would hold that for seniors, and they'd bring in their cases and what have you. And I started coming in as a junior and just kind of like acting like I'm working in the back or doing whatever, and paying attention and what have you, and thinking no one knows I'm there. And I was, hearing they would do it this way fixed, and they would do it this way. And it was just, it kind of made me start thinking, as you're working in the weeds, it made me look at the building we're building and realizing that these weeds are gonna, that they're gonna be part of this building. So I think that really helped. I had a lot of experiences like that. Jim Sidoris, who, uh, well, I'll tell you what he became later on. I think it has more impact at the end. One day I go up and I'm going around the corner, and there's nobody in the room except Jim Sidoris, Dr. Sidoris. And I'm like, and I knew he was highly respected. He was just a clinical faculty guy. He didn't instruct, he didn't do that, but everyone really thought he was amazing. So I'm like, ooh, he says, yeah, Randy, it looks like you and I, and he knew my name. I'm like, oh, I don't know if that was good or bad. He said, I don't think we got the memo. And he said, apparently there's, and I said, yeah, okay, well, sorry. He says, no, this is your opportunity. I went, really? He said, come on in, ask me whatever questions you want to. So I asked him, the stupidest question I could think of, which was actually the smartest question I could think of. It just happened to be stupid. Um, what do you think it really takes to be a really good dentist? And he said two things: really care about the people that you're providing the care for, and the people that are helping you care for them. I thought that seems kind of, a given. Um, and then he said, and learn how to give good shots. And I thought he was messing around. And I'm like, oh, learn how to give a good shot. He goes, no, learn how to give good shots. Most people don't. And I'm like, really? So, and then I talked to him about a bunch of other things. And yes, in the next couple of years, he became president of the American Dental Association.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And
so go ahead.
and right there, what great insight you received, right? And because you only rise to the level of your team, and you only rise to the level of how you care with your patients. And that point about the administration of injections was absolutely golden because people appreciate that like crazy. And I know you got good in that area. So beyond dental school, I know you've been a lifelong learner. As a former dental lab owner and dental technician, Yeah, I attended Pete Dawson's classes in St. Pete back in the 80s and 90s. And for me, it was very important that I understood what I learned from my dad as a dental technician, fit, form, and function. I wanted to get into the textbooks and understand that. You were a Dawson guy.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
think I think that
100%.
that fundamentals of occlusion understanding, and I know there's other additional people that you've worked with. We're going to talk about that.
Sure.
That
Yeah.
certainly will today has bled into or led into your ability to, I think, practice aligner orthodontics at a high level because that strong understanding of occlusion. So let's just talk about this continuing education journey that you've been on, because I know it's been Dawson, it's been LVI and other places. Tell us about that, because I really believe dentists know this. Uh, Whether they're early out of dental school or for X number of years, it's constant and never ending improvement. Like Tony Robbins says, it's constant and never ending learning. Dentistry has continued to evolve. Some things have stood the test of time that we know they were accurate 100 years ago. They're still accurate today. Other things have gone to the wayside. So I really would love to know more about your continuing education journey and how that has raised your level of skill and your enjoyment and your performance in dentistry.
I think, first of all, when you get an education, you can do it one of two ways. You can just get a lot of general things, and you're a general dentist, and you're kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, which is needed out there. If you call a handyman to your house, you don't want a guy who can only work on dishwashers. And yet the guy who only works on dishwashers can fix any dishwasher like that. So, but that's not what you're looking for. So the general, I did a lot of the general, but I also then looked at intensive programs like the 5-year master series through Pete Dawson. And there, most people don't even know that there's a 5-year master series because they don't publicize it. It's like a 1-year thing, and you go at the end of that year, everybody writes what they learned and what have you. And he selects out of those hundreds and hundreds of people how many people to go to the next course, the next level. It's the next year. And so we started out, there were 400 people in the first classroom that I was in, and there were 3 of those classrooms that they did that year. And there was a 5-year waiting list to get into one of those classes. So there's 1,200 people and a 5-year waiting list. I managed to get in 6 months because I bugged the heck out of someone who ended up being his daughter. I didn't know, but I kept telling her, I said, hey, if there's a plane, train, or automobile, I'll get on it and I'll make it there if you tell me last second. I'm ready, got my checkbook out, ready to do it. And she said, well, there's lots of people on the list, and I understand that, but if somebody just can't, I'm there. And I would call her up every couple of weeks. And the one time when I called her up, she said, I was just thinking about you. So that's how I got my start. And I got it started 5 years earlier than I would have, or at least 4.5. So with Pete Dawson, the TMJ and occlusion puts another set of glasses on that you had no idea. You're like, you see everything differently. And when you've been through that training, you know exactly what I mean. You know that if you know somebody else, oh, I've had Pete Dawson's training, you're like, wow, we're like brothers because we've been to the Marines together. We really know because he was a taskmaster, but you learned things that you had no idea of. You had a little inkling, they taught you, and he went volumes into each one of those. So when I met a fellow by the name of Larry Rosenthal at a course, cosmetic dentistry course, because I had my one of my really great friends growing up had tetracycline stained teeth, and they were literally purplish, dark purplish. And he was always a big smiler and a nice guy and all that stuff. But I just thought, I want to fix him. One of these days, I want to fix him. And dental school didn't teach me how to do that other than to whittle them down to little stumps. They said, oh, they're too dark. You got to whittle them down. You can't just veneer them. You can't. Well, Larry Rosenthal taught me how to do that. But so I went to this course, flew up, and literally everybody's talking about the guy is going to be. And I didn't know Larry Rosenthal from a stump. I mean, I wouldn't have known him if he walked up to me and talked to me, which he actually did just before he went on stage. Like we were at lunchtime, he came up to me and started talking to me. and we talked about everything but dentistry because I didn't even know who he was. And then a little fella comes up to me and his little, I don't want to do the language here because it's, it can be misconstrued, but he's like, "How do you know Dr. Rosenthal? Seems ever, whatever." You guys seem like you were. So we connected right away because I didn't ask him for anything because I didn't know who he was. So I didn't like try to get some pearl or whatever, and that might have helped. So I end up, he ends up asking me before he goes, "Hey, what are you doing for dinner tonight?" And I crew that just came in, half of them haven't flown on a plane. I can't, but another time we'll be able to do it. I didn't know who he was. If I'd known who he was, I would have said yes. But thank goodness I didn't. So I end up, watching him come up, and I'm like bumping the person next to me who was my first ever employee. She ended up running my office years later, and she's just since then retired. But I said, "Oh my God, he invited me to dinner." She goes, "You've got to go." I said, "No, and he said, "Me for drinks afterwards. It's okay." And I went, okay. So I go to the place that he invited us for drinks, and he was like a king holding court. There was no room for anyone. I literally was kind of peeking around, and he went, "Hey, Randy." And I'm like, "There's another Randy in the room?" And he's looking around. He's like, "Come here." And I'm like, and I start to walk in. He remembered my name from that brief conversation. And I think I have no idea what that was, why he remembered me necessarily, other than I didn't ask him for anything. The great Larry Rosenthal, you got to ask him for something.
So
I
the relationship developed there from more than you just being a student. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I ended up teaching for at LVI and teaching for Larry Rosenthal afterward. Um, and it was one of the highlights of my career. I've always been interested in orthodontics, and I took an orthodontic uh, course in dental school, which was only offered as a selective, not an elective, but they had to select you. And there was only two people per class that got to do it. And we did full banded ortho, and we went through the whole ortho because our school didn't have a full ortho program, but they had a couple of orthodontists, and those orthodontists like to teach, so they wanted to be able to teach somebody. So they taught pedodontists how to be orthodontists. So they gave them a degree, the pedo ortho. And so we actually got to sit in on that, and so that was my way of, hey, I'm going to go to ortho school.
So
And my orthodontic,
let's build the blocks here.
sure,
So dental school, and then Dawson,
yeah.
and then while Dawson's going on, Rosenthal comes in your life, and then you wind up spending time at LBI, and that was for about how many years were you participating with LBI and instructing there?
Only 3 years with LVI, and
Okay.
then about 15 years with Larry Rosenthal, and
Okay.
and Aesthetic Advantage.
All right. So you were there, pardon my expression, from the stone ages of cosmetic dentistry. Okay.
It's true. It's
Right.
true.
From, the era of toilet bowl white and veneers that were butt ugly, because that was the best ceramically speaking we could do, unless somebody was doing foil feldspathic veneers,
Those were
like
Felspathic that
Lafreniere
Larry
in,
was doing.
in Los Angeles. You know what I'm talking about. But the point
Yep.
is, as your skills evolved on this great strong foundation, right? The technology evolved in terms of the ceramics and skill and the understanding of how you could do things minimally invasive and still produce a great aesthetic result. And that led you to become involved with the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry.
It did.
And you became accredited, correct?
Yeah.
And I think you got some medals along the way. Is that right?
I did. I did. And
How many
I
how
think my
many medals? How many medals, Randy?
11.
11 medals. Okay.
Well, my crowning achievement was the Ivoclar.
Okay.
The Ivoclar Award that company gave out. There were 1,800 people, and they gave out six awards. And there was an overall, and then there were five individual awards. And I ended up getting the overall, which
All right. So
made me feel great.
anyone listening to this point go, okay, this guy's has been a serious dentist. He's not been glib, pretending to know. He's like he's gotten in there in the trenches, the mud, the blood, and the flood, paid the dues, been on the airplanes, been in the hotels, and learned it. Now, let me just ask you if you could go back and you look at all that CE, all that you obtained, in your opinion, do you regret any of that, or are you 100% happy that you put all that time and money into that degree of knowledge?
I would have done more.
Okay, wow, that's significant.
I
So
would have
here,
done more. There were so many things that I had an opportunity to do that I got in on the ground floor before it was really ready. And so it really wasn't great. And you ignored it for 5 years.
yeah.
And you had you gotten in the next semester, you would have been right in the middle of when it really took off and really, developed.
So we'll come back as appropriate to the world of education and advancing yourself. But I want to fill uh, the guys and gals with us on where you are today, because you're on a whole different journey now. And in particular, now a journey that we're taking together.
Absolutely.
And why I wanted to get us together now, early in our relationship, because things are going to change dramatically in the coming months and the next several years. Why? Well, Dr. Johnson has a successful practice that'll do 4 million this year with 10 operatories in Vacaville, California. And that's Solano County. That's kind of a mixture of blue and white collar, right? You're close to Napa, but you're not Napa. But you
Yeah.
still have, you can pull from that and the San Francisco Bay Area. So here you have this practice that's 4 million, 10 operatories. It has the capacity, but it's only open 4 days a week. It's got the capacity to do double that
Yeah.
based on what's there. And now here is what's really interesting, guys, gals. Uh, Dr. Johnson is a clinical CEO of his dental practice. What do I mean by that? A clinical CEO is someone who literally they are in the position where they are not wet-fingered, and it allows Dr. Johnson at this point to enjoy the fruits of his labor, but it also is allowing him, he's got some extra time now in his life, but he's also able to do something that I think you've already heard it. He loves to learn and he loves to share. He loves to educate. And now you have two clinicians in the practice. They're the drivers of dentistry in your practice, but you also now just went to your fourth hygienist. And as we both know, it's the funnel from which all things flow, right? And we've got some additional people we're bringing in to consult with us on the hygiene side to go from good to great.
Mhm.
But the additional point is that this is where you have gotten to at this point in your career. We're going to go from 4 million to 7, 8 million, probably go to a 5 day and maybe a 6 day, half or a full day. And when you look at that right now, what is it that you find to be compelling and enjoyable about this particular moment in time and the journey that we're now on together?
I'm I'm I am making something that is what I wanted to be. I wanted to be that jack of all trades, but master of everything. And it's, I mean, you're always taking implants, and I dove into implants, and I spent so much time traveling around the country and learning and doing all those kind of things. And I thought to myself, man, I probably missed some things at home. Even though I was a little league coach, soccer coach, and all those kinds of things, my kids said, "No, you didn't miss anything. We're fine." But because my mom and dad would always videotape a lot of the things, and I'd come in halfway through and did I miss anything? Kind of thing at school. Um, and I love being there. But I loved being part of that whole thing, the teaching, the mentoring, what have you. I love being mentored, and I thought, you know what, I need to give it back, and that was what Pete Dawson was all about. The people who made it to the end of his mastery, there were 18 of us made it to the end of the 5 year mastery out of 1,200. And why did we make it? Because we were the best and the brightest and the no. We had the heart of teachers. he knew that we would pass on his legacy, that we understood it and that we would move it forward. And I think that's why he never told us exactly. He wasn't that guy that petted you a lot. But I think that's how that happened.
So as you see things right now, you have really positioned yourself to, at this point in your career, well, coming up on 40 years, to live the dream that a lot of doctors would like to achieve. Maybe they don't have the passion for teaching that you do, where you don't have to be there every day. You're there as you need. And while you have a successful practice, your legacy is you want to make something bigger and better
Yeah.
for the team that's there. And you know that in the time that we've worked together, one of the things that you've come to recognize that I've identified for you is, look, this practice is here forever. When your team hears that the good ship, Dr. Randy Johnson, isn't going anywhere, okay, what does that say to the team? It's like, yeah, Doc, he might retire at some point, but this is special, right? What we have here. And you know that we've spent time talking about the values, and you went through with me and your leadership team, identifying the values. And the values really, they came from your team, but guess what? Those values are your values, because as go your values, so goes the rest of the team. It's like as mom and dad's values go, so goes the behavior and the values of the kids in the family, right? Do
It's
your
true.
homework, get home on time, you know, pick up after yourself. Whatever the rules are, those values, be honest, be kind. You know, the people around you, whether it's at home or leading a team, everybody picks up on that. So know that to me, and I know to you, this is an important thing. I think you inherently knew this as an individual who's oriented toward leadership, that there's a particular way you treat people. There's a particular way that you express your values. When you think about that today, when you were a young dentist and you were first in practice, I
A while
know,
ago.
like I know you don't walk on water. None of us do. You've
Oh
made the
gosh.
mistakes, but I
Oh,
think but I think that there was this sense that you had, probably a lot of it going back to your dad and your mom and how you were raised. This is how you treat people. You went back to practice in the area where you grew up. So how much of that do you agree with me that, like, yeah, this is how I was raised, this is who I was, if you will, nurtured to be? And how much of that, when it came to leadership, did you learn through just the ins and outs of making the mistakes in growing a successful practice?
well, it's as far as the mores and values and things, I really picked those up from family and the people that were around me. When it came to successful business and things like that, my mother was a great businesswoman, and my father was a good businessman. Um, she kind of held the strings for a lot of things, but he was a hard worker. So I knew that there was the hard work aspect and the smart work aspect. Now, as a dentist, I started thinking, do I sell my practice? Do I like would I sell it to that's going to take good care of my patients? Oh my gosh. And so I thought, maybe I can start hiring some associates and really pick. I mean, really choose. I have two amazing associates. I mean, I don't tell them that all the time because their heads would blow up, but they're both amazing in their own right. And I'm trying to develop a little bit of a Mayo clinic, in that everybody has their area of specialty. One of them is now doing Dawson, and the other one's, he's getting into all on fours, and so as I add people, I'm still doing the Invisalign and all those kinds of things, but there's going to come a time when I'm not doing those kinds of things either, but I'm going to keep the practice. And I get to go in. When I go in, I literally go in and go around the operatories, and I will see at least three puppy dogs. Well, those are actually patients that go, "Oh my God, Dr. Johnson, I'm so happy to see you. I didn't think I'd get to see you today." And you're like, Me? Really me? And it's such an amazing feeling. And the staff is like, oh my gosh, you've got to come in and see this patient. This patient's been asking about you every time they come in and you haven't been here and whatever. So it's just kind of nice to do that. Plus to be able to mentor because dental school teaches you like an eighth of what you need to know. And many people get stuck and they get up to 50% of what they need to know and they practice the rest of their time that way. And once you know that you don't know it, and that's Pete Dawson's favorite thing to say is, doctor, you don't know what you don't know. And you don't even know that you don't know it. And you're like, oh, that's powerful when you repeat that enough times to yourself. They don't know that they don't know it. The first part of learning is realizing you don't know it and feeling like, oh my gosh. I watched one of my associates who's going through the Pete Dawson thing. I watched him go from being a pretty confident guy to being less confident. And I said, why are you being less confident? You know more. You can do better. He says, yeah, but I know all the mistakes I can make. And I know all the, and I said, yeah, and you're much less likely to make one. I said, you need to feel more confident going through than so having to mentor them through that because he would have slowed down. He would have, gotten into a little hole where he only did what he could imagine doing. So in the business aspect of dentistry, I wasn't very good at it. I did not know my numbers. How did I get such a successful practice? I had some good people around me, um, you know, and intuitively I did certain things right without really knowing. And I've had lots of coaches, and I won't name the companies and what have you, but I've learned something from every single one of them, and I'm glad I went through it. And I know you didn't know I was going to say this, but meeting you has been the best. I mean, you think, okay, I met Pete Dawson, I met Larry Rosenthal, I met a couple other people along the way, and then I met Mike. Um, it's changed. I was like, oh, I don't want to know the numbers. I don't need to know this. And he's like, oh no, you do need to know. He says, and then he shows you the numbers, and you're like, oh. And I go, I need to fix that. He said, yeah, you didn't even know you need to fix. You didn't know what you didn't know, and you didn't even know you didn't know it. And I'm like, where'd you hear that from? So being with you and learning some of those kinds of things, I'm excited about being a CEO and still being a mentor and a teacher, so to speak, and bringing people along. And I don't lecture to my people. I literally ask them questions, just like you do to me. And when I can't answer the questions, it makes me think, should I be able to answer that question?
Yeah.
And I love the way you bring us along. And you've now, my team has now fallen in love with you. And so they're like, wow, he's the best thing's ever happened to us. Because, somebody comes in, usually they're like, oh, we're not sure if we like this guy person. They're trying to get us to do these things. And that has been the biggest blessing. And you work harder than anybody else I know at that role. I mean, like you said, we've only been together, 6 months? And I said, but you've spent enough time with me to where it could have been 3 to 5 years with anybody else. And that still would have been a lot of time spent. So I appreciate you and I appreciate what you bring to the game. You're making me better. I'm more excited about where I'm headed in dentistry, and I am not ready to retire anytime soon.
Randy, thank you for saying that. And that means a lot to me. But I'm also going to tell you something. Um, I've written it's 4 books now, and they're privately published. They're not on Amazon. And the latest one is Dentistry is a Team Sport. And you know that really well. For me to coach, for me to be with you, you've got to be coachable. And not only are you coachable, but your team is coachable. And there is a degree of there's something really important, and you've really picked up on this. What is essential to me for me to be effective with you and your team? They have to be willing to be accountable, and they have to be willing to be disciplined. And to the extent that the team is accountable and disciplined, and they're given the right tools to use, that's how you go from good to great. Your team, whether it's working with my team at Gold Medal Dental Marketing, which are absolute experts,
They're
to working with
fantastic.
me on the coaching side, your team is always Johnny on the spot and responding. So we're only as good together to the extent that people understand how serious this is and how fun it can be if
Mhm.
people do what they're supposed to do. Now, I can understand that in some situations, in a lot of situations, people are used to dealing with a marketing agency where it doesn't work. And I understand why typically it doesn't work. And the same thing is true on the coaching side. What I want to underline for the folks with us today is it doesn't matter how good I may be or my team may be with me. The only way I can be successful with Dr. Randy Johnson is for his team to want to play at a high level. And that starts with you. So this is really the meat of the nut. It's with who you are, what you are, and where you want to go. And we already talked about the values and how strong they are with you. So you have this clear vision, and I absolutely love it because I think many, many dentists would like to be in a position where they are able to really enjoy the fruits of their labor before retirement. To go into a part-time role and to not be in a hurry to sell, whether it's to a DSO or to another private buyer. And that's the position that you're in right now. And I want guys and gals here to know that, look, if you are an owner, if you want to become an owner, this is possible for you, but it doesn't happen by accident, right? And you've had great coaches before me, and I'm privileged and honored to be with you today. But just understand, those of you that are with us right now, you can have your dreams come true. But you've got to be willing to say, okay, where am I? Who am I? What am I? Where do I want to go? And then recognize that this is not a solo sport. It's a team sport. That means both your players as well as the people that you have on the outside advising you. Does that all make sense to you, Randy? And I know you already know this well.
Well, I might have been able to do what I want to do without you.
Yeah.
Um, but nowhere near as well and as much fun as successfully. Well, it's the same thing, but also not having to like fight my team to get them to do it. You've come in and you know how I mentor my team and how they, you know, what it takes for them to see the benefit in things. And their benefits are not all bonuses and, that we're not really, that's not like our emphasis. Yes, we have some of those things, but that's not the emphasis. The emphasis is how do we make this a better place for you and for our patients and how does everybody need to play? How does everybody need to do? And so when I brought you in, that's what I told them. I said, "Hey, we're bringing in somebody who is who knows we're great, who knows we're really good, who knows we got our stuff together. But we all know that there's little glitches and things here and there that none of us have time to work on." I said, "I'm bringing in somebody to work on those things, make that a smooth and well-oiled machine." And I was hoping that that was the case. But I'd already done some talking to you. But what somebody says and what somebody does can be very different. But to let them know to where they were very receptive to you coming in, although they still, you still had to prove yourself. And even after the first meeting they had with you, we have an executive board now, which I've never had before. So we're run a little bit more like a corporation, even though I kind of don't like corporations necessarily, the corporate thought of dentistry, because we're
Yeah.
definitely, yes, we're incorporated, yes, all that sort of thing, but we don't run like a
You
corporation.
have a leadership team, an actual leadership
Yeah,
team.
we do. We do. And they fell in love with all the concepts and they liked the way you did it. And they thanked me for bringing you in. And it's really gone well. But I also, you know, I had to set some of that up to make sure that it really could happen as smoothly and easy. You could have won them over, I'm sure, but
Well, and I
it
appreciate
helps.
that. And I think that what we're really talking about here is the macro and the micro. And as you know, working together, we do the macro and the micro. What you don't want in the world of an advisor like me is only deal with the macro. To go in and cheerlead and throw a little bit of motivation at you and then I'm out the door. No, that's you got to get in the weeds. And this is what I want to underline to your colleagues that are with us right now is you have to be willing, if you get the right people advising you, roll up your sleeves with them, hold them accountable, get in the weeds and challenge them as they challenge you. And I know we've already experienced that together, haven't we?
Oh, no, we have. Getting in the weeds is something that you definitely do. I mean, we have a project we're working on. Next thing you know, you've been talking to three different companies. We have setups to where you eliminate one of the companies, and now we have two companies, and you have me get in there and take a look, and we're both kind of working through it and deciding if we're going to work with one of those companies. And I really love the way you've done that. You've saved me so much footwork. I would have never had the time to do that. You've done it. I think with my team, they appreciate that too. They see that I wanted to do all these things, but I was being a dentist. Now I'm being a CEO, and this is my job. But I realize that I'm not prepared to be a CEO.
Yeah.
Mike is. Mike is a CEO. That I mean, he's been there, done that, has multiple t-shirts. And so I'm a wannabe, and he says I'm doing a great job. And I say, well, yeah, but I'm hopefully getting better.
Oh,
It,
I think you're eminently coachable because God's gifted you with a great brain and a great personality, and you're a person of character that makes you very coachable. And just for example, in you and I talking about your two associates,
mm,
and just me underlining for you, these two gentlemen, they, number one, they were picked by you for a reason. You see in them people of character, people of potential. They're young in their career. And what did we wind up underlining together? How do we get them from good to great? And what did I talk with you about recently? It's you've got to be meeting with these guys individually on a regular basis for that over the sandwich, having the conversation, and then you've got to be meeting with them together. And I think we just agreed on, meeting with them together every 6 weeks and then individually once a month. Was that it, or was it the other
yeah,
way around?
no, no,
And
that's it.
and just that little insight and that cadence, what that is already is meaning to these two gentlemen. It's like I'm important. Doc's not just out there playing golf or traveling the world and weren't, cashing the check. He's in there with us to mentor us because we respect him and he's successful and he's getting in there with us. And, again, for guys and gals with us right now, you understand that whether you're still full-time, part-time, if you've got associates in your practice, or if you don't have any associates, your job is to lead. And that means to lead yourself in the right direction, to make sure you're learning and growing and becoming better, but that you're also responsible for the growth of your team, right? And I know, boy, if you're in the treadmill, which is why I wrote Beyond the Treadmill, how do you get off it, right? It becomes very difficult to do that. Well, Dr. Randy Johnson, what I'm going to tell you right now is we've come to the limit of our time together, but this may be our first recording together, our first episode, first podcast, but it's not the last because guess what, guys and gals? Uh, Dr. Randy has said he's willing to have you go along with him on this journey, okay, from where he is now, which is very successful, going from four to an even bigger and better practice with more people doing even greater things in providing a very high level of care to the patients that are in his practice. And this is a big deal. And we'll talk about this in an upcoming episode about the vision that we set, that you set with the team about what is it? Who are you? What are you at the Good Ship Randy Johnson? What do you want people to say about your practice? Because guess what? There's a lot of dentists in Solano County. There's a bunch of dentists in Vacaville. You want to stand out. You already do. But we want you to stand out in a way that is incomparable. And we're in the process of doing that. So, Randy, I'm so happy that we're on this journey together.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael. Michael Kulwiec is has become one of my heroes, and I appreciate you very much.
Well, likewise. Guys, gals, thank you for joining us. you will see the two of us together again. I look forward to that next time when we're together, Randy, because we've got a lot of wonderful things to talk about. I'd really like to get into the 6 components. You know what those are that I
Yeah,
teach? That's the macro level stuff. So I would suggest that we plan on talking about those components in our next get together. How does that sound?
love that. And I've loved your books. Thank you for sharing those with me, even though they're not all of them have been put out to the public yet.
Yeah, well, they are available now there'll be a link in these episodes on how to
Okay,
buy
well, there
them, but they're just not available on Amazon for good
I'll let you
reason.
know now. Totally worth the read. And I can't say that I've read them just once.
Ah, well,
There's so much packed in there.
appreciate that. And you know what? Here's the good news. You know this. It only takes about an hour and a half, 2 hours to get through them in your first read. It's not like you got to set aside a weekend. And
No,
but I appreciate you reinforcing the content there. That's my 50 years of being around dentistry. As you know, I was born into dentistry, and I love dentists. I love guys like you, gals that are out there as well, because this is such a noble profession. And it's also one where if you do the right things as an owner and even an associate now, man, you can have a wonderful income. And
hmm,
that's really cool. I think that's a fantastic aspect of dentistry today. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. Until next time, cheers. See you again. Bye-bye.
thanks, Mike.